It's a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. She is a syndicated columnist who you can get online at AnnCoulter.com. Ann Coulter, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you, John Phillips?
I'm good. Can you believe Jeffrey Toobin's already back at work?
This is why I have to listen to your show. I did not know that, but I do know you cannot go poor in America as a liberal. All is forgiven. How about Hunter Biden using the N word? All these 12-year-old girls singing along to a rap song on a TikTok video or being thrown out of college, canceled. But it's Hunter Biden. No, there are definitely different rules depending on where you fall on the pecking order in the woke wars these days.
Maybe what they can do is they can bring back Crossfire. They can make the host Jeffrey Toobin and Hunter Biden, and then just change the name to Perverts on Parade.
No, I have to say, I really would not have known if you had not mentioned it. In as much as, like the vast majority of Americans, I don't really watch much CNN. I don't watch much cable news at all. All the action is on Twitter.
Yeah. CNN is like pro wrestling. On Twitter, it's a real life knife fight.
Right. Plus, I mean, all we're going to hear from now until probably the next presidential election on MSNBC and I assume CNN is more about January 6th. This is going to get more coverage than the Holocaust. And it ranks about the same as far as cable news is concerned. Then you go to Fox and, I tweeted that yesterday. I tweeted that last week. So really all I need is an internet connection.
All right. I need you to put your mugged hat on, which is my third favorite book that you've written, Behind Treason and Slander. But it's especially pertinent to what's going on in the world today. Last year, the LA County Board of Supervisors voted to defund the LA County Sheriff's Department to the tune of $105 million. I want to go through some stats with you as to what's happened to crime in Los Angeles County since the defunding of the Sheriff's Department. Grand theft auto is up 40%. Murders are up 95%. Aggravated assaults are up 13%. Arson is up 22%. And rape is up 7.8%.
Wow, that's pretty fast.
No kidding.
I guess criminals watch the news.
Now we know who's buying all of that bonita.
Right. Now we know who's watching Jeffrey Toobin. Yes, no, and thank you very much, and I love that you rank the order in which you like my books. As I've said in Mugged and many other columns, as soon as Democrats got control of the levers again, they were going to start releasing criminals. I mean, what we saw in, first in the 60s and 70s, when the streets ran with blood, as they are beginning to again, but what we saw in reaction to that, the 80s and the 90s, Reagan judges challenging all of these left-wing set-them-loose judges, prison building. I can even give a small bit of credit to the former Governor Cuomo, the current governor's father, Mario Cuomo. He actually built a lot of prisons. Crime was bad enough that even this one lone Democrat cared about it. And then, of course, the miracle mayor, Rudy Giuliani, we finally had someone to implement the policies that Republicans had been promoting for 20 years, starting with what is generally called the broken windows policy. You enforce the low-level crimes. And not only does it create a sense of order, but when scofflaws get stopped jumping turnstiles, for example, they're going to have their guns taken off them. You want to stop gun crime, there's no better way to do it than enforcing low-level crimes. They don't go out with guns anymore. So crime fell absolutely stunningly dramatically, starting with New York City and then in any cities that imitated New York City. I've never seen government do something for good with such a stunning impact on people's lives. I mean, look at, so I'm sorry, this is so New York-centric. That is the center of an awful lot of both the crime and then the reaction to the crime. Brooklyn used to be a no-go zone. All these hipsters living out there, I've been taunting them for a decade now, pointing out, you wouldn't have gone here 15, 20 years ago. You better thank Rudy Giuliani for this. But no, for liberals turning New York City into a livable city where old people, girls, young people, children could walk any place, really pretty much any place. It makes life possible, and cities are a lot of fun when you can go out and enjoy them. But no, the Giuliani period was a hellish period for liberals. I quoted this guy, Richard, I think his name is Richard Goldstein in my book. He was on Hardball with Chris Matthews. Even Chris Matthews was stunned by this guy. Matthews started saying something about how great Giuliani was, and you walk around New York, you feel so safe. And Richard Goldstein said, safe? Safe? You feel safe? Well, maybe you're not a black kid having your pants pulled down in the subway. And I'm just staring at this on the TV thinking, Richard Goldstein must have taken a vow to never leave his home in the 70s, never read a newspaper, never allow anyone who had been outside to come into his apartment, and just has no idea what it was like living in a city with that level of crime.
Let's go back to broken windows for a second, because you mentioned the people that jumped the turnstile at the subway. They were certainly the focus of a lot of the early attention. Same thing with the squeegee guys. The theory being that if you go after the low-level crime, you'll have a sense of orderliness and lawfulness, and people will essentially follow the law. They'll be more inclined to follow the law because they won't see chaos and wilding around them. Now what we have is a homeless population that's essentially off limits from the cops. I see that really as the original sin to the spike in crime that we're now experiencing for the serious crimes like murder, rape, and aggravated assault. Do you see the connection there the same way that the people that jumped the turnstiles and the squeegee guys were to the 1990s to what's going on with the homeless now?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in many ways it's worse because crazy people are crazy. You don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they're just going to not harm anyone, just be crazy, and they will only harm themselves. I don't think it's a very civilized way to treat people who have a mental illness. One of the cases, and again, sorry, I keep going back to New York, but that really is that's the crucible of so many crime policies, both good and bad. I don't know if you remember from Muggs, Billy Boggs. It was this crazy woman. I mean, she was like schizophrenic or something. And she used to sit on the sidewalk in Midtown, Upper East Side, hurling curses at people, running into traffic, smoking crack cocaine. And her sisters were begging the city, saying she has a mental illness. She called herself Billy Boggs after a very popular local newscaster whose name was Bill Boggs. So she called herself Billy Boggs. And the New York City ACLU and the CLU, no, they stepped in and said, why Billy Boggs is as sane as any of the members of our board of directors. Which I thought, yes, that's probably true. And that's why we don't want them on the street. In any event, okay, Billy Boggs did, by fortuitously, never end up killing someone. Well, around the same time, a few years later, I think it was, a rockette had married a guy, was living on Central Park West, walking her poodle in Central Park. It was like 7 in the morning, right there on Central Park West. This homeless guy that the neighborhood had been going crazy over. He's yelling at people. He's out of his mind. He chases them. Stabbed her to death. Chased her and just stabbed her to death in broad daylight. That can sometimes happen with crazy people. They're not just crazy to themselves. Their family members may want to get them off the street, but most of us, our primary concern is that they don't stab us to death. So yes, the homelessness. Oh my gosh, it's quadrupled the sense of disorder. But again, I do want to say one more thing about perhaps they didn't plan it this way, but the broken windows policy was the best way to fight gun violence. Liberals are always pretending they give a crap about gun violence, which they manifestly do not, since, well, your governor released a bunch of gun felons from prison. Remember, he gave them all clemency as soon as he came in. People who had actually committed crimes with guns. What ended up being a huge bonus of the broken windows policy was someone criminally inclined young men would just go about the city with guns on them. Well, they stopped doing that because they knew if I jump a turnstile, which of course I will, I could get stopped and they'll take my gun from me. So they would go about whatever mayhem they were going to commit. They'd leave their guns home.
Did you see the Britney Spears documentary on, I think it was either Netflix or Hulu?
No, I count on you to fill me in for anything culturally relevant.
Okay, well, if you were to see it, you would throw things at the TV, which is what I almost did. It was actually a very good documentary, and it's a sad story about this poor girl with talent who got exploited by everyone around her. They stole things from her. They essentially made her crazy, and after they made her crazy, they used that as an excuse to victimize her again. So, of course, what do you have? You have enterprising politicians who will do anything to attach themselves to any story that has news coverage, and they want to change the way that conservatorship laws are written in the state of California because of how poor Britney Spears was victimized by her Hollywood talent managers. And I'm pulling my hair out as I'm watching this saying, okay, this is one person who lives a completely atypical life from everyone else. If you idiots change the conservatorship rules so that it becomes harder to declare someone to be crazy, what you're going to do is take an exploding homeless population and you're going to put it on steroids.
Oh, that's a really good point, John Phillips. And yes, Britney Spears, I am vaguely familiar with the arc of her career. She reminds me there are others like this. In fact, there's a group of former child actors. It's very hard to achieve early fame. And I've always thought it's like one of those genie gives you 3 wishes things that you can never ever get right. Because every little girl would love to be, let me be a pop star, let everyone love me, let me make lots of money and perform, and then they get it, and it's really the worst life you could possibly have. You never know who your real friends are. You have hangers-on, you have groupies, you have people who want something from you, whether it's association with you or money from you. No, you're much better getting fame and fortune later in life when you already have a set group of friends. That's how unusual a case this is. There aren't a lot of teenage pop stars.
No, but there are a lot of people who need to have conservatorship.
Yes, there are.
We have large and healthy supply of them. And it's already hard to do it. It's hard to go convince a judge that someone can't make decisions for themselves and they need to be institutionalized. And if you put up even more barriers to that, it's going to get worse.
Yes, I've been writing about that for a long time because who's that guy? I forgot the guy who wrote the book. Anyway, almost all of these mass shootings are someone who was in a previous era would have been put away for his own good, perhaps medicated. By the way, they do have medication for schizophrenic now. There are schizophrenics who have jobs and families and go about their lives. They have to take their medication.
And most of them have cable news shows.
Yes, or they're on the board of the New York ACLU. But yes, we used to put them away, and then it started with your state. Everything starts with California, where it became extremely hard to put someone away because, who to say who's crazy? Oh, I'll say. Send them all to me. I'll decide them before breakfast. So these people, howling at the moon, they are out on the street, and yes, they end up mostly hurting themselves, but they also sometimes push you in front of an oncoming subway train.
Yeah. And what you described, by the way, was the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act, and that was the thing that made it virtually impossible to put anyone in a mental institution. And that was back in the 70s. Or 60s. It's
also, I'll say again, I don't want to sound like a sappy liberal, but it's a cruel thing to do to the mentally ill. Imagine this was your brother, your mother, your child. They're mentally ill. It's an illness. There's a word for it. You can look this up on Google while I'm talking too. There's a word for a kind of illness where you don't know you're ill. That's what mental illness is. You don't know that you have this illness, so someone else has to make sure you're going to be safe. It's estimated that I think it's about a quarter to a third of prison populations are made up of the mentally ill. You can imagine how these people are being treated in prison. They don't need to be in prison. They need to be medicated and maybe given a nice warm bed and 3 squares a day, and maybe sent off and to live their lives. Maybe to be kept in these places so they don't harm themselves or others.
One of the other topics that you wrote about in Mugged is this accordion of population patterns, of geographic patterns, where people go from the cities to the suburbs then back to the cities, when cities like New York become safe places to live again. The homeless populations in places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, New York City are making these cities almost unlivable to live in. Do you see a scenario coming on the horizon where the population patterns shift yet again to the suburbs?
Oh, totally. In fact, I was thinking of, I can only say this, privately, but I'm just talking to you, John. I've been thinking of, and no, it was horrible. It wrecked everybody's life. Don't worry, it wrecked my life too. But I've been thinking of writing a column on the silver lining of COVID. And I have not done so for obvious reasons yet. But the other one is, the silver lining of New York City going all to hell is that don't think I'm going to be seeing a lot of 3-child strollers anymore. Giuliani allowed all the young parents. It used to be as soon as people got married and had kids, I'm doing it for the child, I'm moving to the suburbs. You're doing it for yourself. It's easier for you. It's very expensive to live in a city. No, it was fantastic for young families. And, good for them, but at least we won't all be tripping over these double strollers anymore.
And we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for stopping by. Go read Ann's column at AnnCoulter.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Ann Coulter.
Good to talk to you, John Phillips.
Likewise.